Good morning, everyone. This is Norma Cowie on another Norma Talk session. And today our topic is, do your thoughts help or hinder? Now, I'm going to ask a couple of questions just to set the record straight. And it says, do your thoughts help or hinder you? Are you aware you have a thought every second? And I'm just using that as an awareness point, as it's actually quicker. Are you aware that there are different types of thoughts? Are you aware of how important thoughts are? And these are three questions for us to explore today as we go through. Now, there are several different kinds of thoughts. Random thoughts. You have once and they disappear. Now, the key here is to ensure they are not your inspirational thoughts, which support you from your high self. Repeated thoughts, these are the ones you need to be aware of as they create your vibration frequency. And plus, they can show you your personal programs. These are the ones that I work mostly with. And I find that they all are very, very important, those repeated ones for sure. And I would make sure that you are really knowing. And we're going to talk a lot about how these work. Now, there are other thoughts that you can pick up. Those are from the collective consciousness often, and that's how they come on in and how they work. But how do you know which one is which? And that is because you need to observe them. Now, creating an observer sometimes is a little bit more complex, because until you create an observer to observe your thoughts, now for me, I observe them when I'm watching television, and I don't like to admit it, but sometimes when I'm driving on a long road or something, I'll just sit back and just kind of watch to see what's going across the screen of my thought form, because I have a whole theory about how to describe this as how the subconscious throws out the thoughts and it crosses across the conscious mind. And if we don't give it any energy, it just goes back into the subconscious soup. When we give a thought energy, what it does is that it takes root. It's now got some power to it, and it will repeat. Now, if I'm doing a lecture, I'll draw kind of a Ferris wheel, and I'll point out that the thought will jump on a seat, will come around to the conscious point, and when you give it power, it doesn't jump off its seat back into the collectiveness of your own subconscious. So that is the thing to recognize. How often do you repeat a thought? How often does that thought repeat? Like, as I said, that sometimes you have a thought and it just comes in. And often those are coming in from the collective consciousness outside and they float by. I will find them, and I've mentioned this before, I can walk into a store sometimes and I will have a thought and think, oh, someone's been in here thinking of shoplifting. Now that one's more than one person usually, because the thought form is a little bit big, but I'll pick it up, I'll go, and then I'll clear the thought form so that other people don't walk into it. And I know that they do, because I had a person that studied with me a long time ago, I mean a long time ago, phoned me one day and said, can you all of a sudden start thinking about stealing things? And I said, oh, you're just picking up the collective consciousness when you're in a certain place. And no, that's not you that you're picking up, but don't give it any energy. Don't act on it. It'll be fine. In fact, you know how to dispel them. So just dispel the thought. Eradicate that thought. The last one I had was I was in Walmart before mask days. And I was wandering by there's two entrances into our big store. And I was walking by the entrance that was closer to all the vegetables and stuff. And as I walked by, I had this thought, and it was strong, very strong thought that, oh, I could just walk out the door with my basket full of stuff, or some stuff. And then, because I know I've heard, I'm not sure, that if you walk out with it, it's very difficult to prove anything. But anyway, I went right away, well, that's not my thought. I don't think like that. And so I dispelled that, but it was very, very strong. Now, if a person doesn't understand thought, they could actually act on that. And very often people act on thoughts that come in that other people have thought, and they think it's them and they act on it. And that's why knowing what your thoughts are very, very, very important. But I do want to talk about the observer first before I overwhelm you with all sorts of other things. The observer sits back, and you can create your own observer if you don't have one. And basically, it's about learning his kind of maybe, I was going to say splitting yourself a little, but it's like you're watching, and then you can sit back and watch the thoughts as they go past in your mind. And usually I find if we think of it back, I'm going to slink down a little bit so you can see this. On the back here, this is more where, to me, the observer sits. And it can observe all sorts of things. It can observe feelings as well as thoughts. It can be quite a really good tool to work with. But the thing is, first of all, is to be aware that thoughts are always moving. You're very seldom, except when you get obsessive thoughts. Now, when you get obsessive thoughts, I'm gonna put up a tarot card here. When you're putting up an obsessive thought, gets like this. Now, I call this my worry card, but it also means just mentally over too much, because way in the, where are we here? Yeah, in the distance here, because it shows up backwards on the screen, sorry. When the distance here is the castle or your goal, and you're heading for your goal, but you've got so many thoughts going on about what, when, where, and how, and maybe nothing even actually to do with what you're really wanting to think about. It's just thinking. And so you can't see, the old saying, you can't see the wood for the trees. That's this. That's what happens when you overthink. Now, I'm just going to put that down. It begins, I'm going to tell you how overthinking begins with this symbol here. Confusion of thinking. Number of readings I did this week, actually, it's one reason I'm talking about this subject today, is the sense that people, these symbols came up a lot for people who are reading for, because it starts off getting confused. Why we get confused is we lose sight of the goal. When we lose sight of the goal, other thoughts come in, and then the mind is just randomly looking at all these different thoughts, all these different ways, all these different things. And so consequently, it's not effective. And as I said up here originally, that we need to be watching our frequency, our vibration, because that's what we're attracting to us. Thinking is one of the first ways we begin to create. And we all want to create. We all want to create what we want to create and bring about what we want. The random thoughts, as I said, now I have talked in the past about the high self and how it inspires us. But if we've got all that jumble of thinking going on, the high self can't get through. I know in my transformational work, so often they say, they don't listen to me because I can't get through the mental claptrap. I can't, they don't hear me. Now, you've got a part within you, or an aspect, I often call it. If you've got an aspect that we call a high self, the high self's job, because everything has a job, the job is to inspire you. So if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling down, its job is to say, hey, things are going to be better, or maybe do this, or maybe do that. They don't really tell you what to do, but they'll inspire you to shift whatever energy or thought or whatever is getting in the way of your creation and your happiness. But if you've got a lot of mental stuff going on, if you've got a lot of thoughts and all sorts of things, scared that you can't get in, I know that fears it comes into the emotional element, but emotions, as far as I'm concerned, are driven by the thinking process. And I know a lot of people have that reverse, but in my understanding and looking over all these years, I realized that the mental is the driver, but the reaction is the emotional, and that's what we tend to feel And so therefore we think that's the primary thing. But the high self will tell you exactly. Many times mine has led me, into where I need to be. And people often think that's their guide or whatever. And that's fine. I don't mind what name you call on it. But I do know when I'm looking at people, if their high self can work with them, then it makes a huge, big difference, because there's more relaxing, there's more an awareness, there's more all sorts of things. Now, I've talked about creating an observer, and I do know very early when I started the Norma talks, I did quite a long about, I know that was included at one of them anyway. So you can look back and see where that was also talked about. So repeated thoughts are the ones you need to get a handle on, because they are the key to your personal program. See, when we make a decision, it can be about anything. When we make a decision like that, this is it. We create a little box of this is how it is. I'm banging on my table, so sorry if my computer went ding ding. And that decisional point is such a huge thing, because we now have taken it from random thoughts into a personal program. Now, the program may be tiny when you first begin, but when you feed that program and you feed those thoughts, it gets bigger and bigger. And so we have I'm just thinking of my pickle jar metaphor, which talks about programs, but it's like we get bigger and bigger, and some begin to dominate us very clearly. And one way of discovering what they are, I was going to say, besides coming and seeing me, is knowing, and there's others that do my kind of work too, is knowing what the thinking is, because the thinking will be part of the program. It is a key in. Now, when we go on a personal growth journey, we are going inside. So how do we get inside? Often people say, I don't know where to start. So that's what my readings do, is to help people start, show them where they can begin or how they're progressing on their inner journey. Now we go inside. So how do we know? Now what are we looking at? We're looking at our thoughts and our feelings, yes. So what are they representative of? Is our personal programs that are coming up to the surface. I spent personally a lot of years, and even now, watching my external world to see what triggers me. Now, in the beginning, I was triggered all over the place. Oh my goodness me, too much. So I'd have to choose. What I wanted to become aware of. And I didn't know all the things I know now. So it's much quicker for me. I didn't know about word chains. By the way, there is a video on that. I didn't know about transformation, quick transformation. I didn't know about those things. So I had to kind of figure out what was happening and what was going on. But the triggers come from the outside. So how can you can be triggered? Well, somebody may have a word that was important to you, that somebody had called you. Maybe they, like me, I was told I was stupid once when I was very, very little. The word stupid would light me up like crazy. No one wants to be thought of as stupid. And it came from my dad, actually, when I tracked it down. I was playing with something, and my dad walked by, looked down at me, and thought, he didn't know I could read thoughts, you see, when I was little, before I could speak. Looked down and said, oh my goodness, she's stupid. That went deep. I created a lot of counter programming to prove that I wasn't stupid, but the bottom program was I was stupid. The thought was there that there was something, and actually I wasn't in my body, ended up not being in my body for many years when I was young. So I was a little out there and a little weird. I heard my mom saying one day, she's a funny little thing, isn't she? Good old mom. Yeah, funny little thing. When you get, well, I call it fragmented, because you go into these different aspects of yourself and these programs that run your life. So how, as an adult, you begin to try and figure out who you are, is to start looking at the world around you. I had to sort of come out from some fog and begin to become aware of the world around me and find, where did I get triggered? Where did I get all of a sudden, what was it? Was it a word? Was it and I could see that. That happened not that long ago, actually, when a person's name I hadn't heard for a long time, that's well known, which I won't talk about who it is, but it triggered me, and I snapped at the person who had said it, like really, I went, what the heck was that? Like, that was not how I want to respond or need to respond. And I'll even use the should word, should respond. So I went, when I came home, I sat down and I did a word chain on that, on the word, and cleared that out. And the next time someone said, well, I know you don't like that, like this name. And I said, no, I'm fine now. I cleared that. Now, if I didn't know how to do that, and I didn't know way back then, but I began to become aware of where my triggers were. And that's why I began to do a lot more interpersonal growth with different people, learning how to change programming and change things. And it became such a, and then you get longer and longer periods of time when things are easy. And then all of a sudden, everything all begins again. So it's like, what other thoughts that you have? I'm just looking over the questions I put out at the beginning. Thoughts are happening all the time. I'm just going to show you another tarot card. I love these things. They just taught me so much how we think. New thoughts all the time. Hopefully new thoughts, or not so much new thoughts. What happens when you have a thought is really what you're wanting to do is this symbol, the Four of Wands, where you're wanting to achieve it. So we got to know what happens, and if in between we have Mr. 5, confusion and everything all muddled up, where in fact our 6 tells us we just need to have our thoughts organized, and victory is assured. That's what that symbol to me means. But we're human, and I think we have to be very tolerant of ourselves, and we have to love ourselves a lot. But we need to know that thoughts are happening all the time, which is creating whether you think of it as a vibration rate, which our older people will think of, or frequency rate, which the younger people will think of. And you just need to become aware through your observer of the different types of thoughts. Are they supportive thoughts, or are they not supportive thoughts? And this is why I'm going to say thoughts either help or hinder you. If they're not thoughts which are supporting you, loving you, caring about you, saying that you can do it, like your own self-support system, you need to change your thinking. Bottom line. Now, how do you do that? You do that. This is the simple way I tell all my clients. When you have a thought that you do not want to support, you freeze it in time, you erase it, and then you replace it with what you want. It can be a goal, it can be self-image, it can be anything that you want, but it's really important that you love yourself, that you are your own cheering system. So often we're looking for the cheering from the outside, but the outside is a reflection of you. I had someone come the other day talking about how they just don't feel acknowledged no matter what they do. And I told them a story about me, is that I felt the same way for many years, and I worked on the acknowledgement. And when I cleared the need for acknowledgement, I heard all the compliments in the world, which I wasn't hearing before, because the program says, you're not good enough, you can't do this, this isn't worthy to have. So it's really important to know you're thinking and have your thoughts work. So freeze, evaporate, replace. Now, I wrote about that many, many years ago in Secrets for Living Happily. I didn't know the quick, easy way. I said, perish this thought, which is the same thing. I gave the thought, perish that thought, and then replace it with what you want. A lot of people have used it over the years and find it really is helpful. The other questions that I said for us, you just need to be aware that thoughts come first, and they are important. I just want to make sure I've got everything that I have made notes on. Oh yeah, other thoughts which you can pick up. The collective consciousness is there, and it's thick and gooey. And that's why we talk often about raising your own personal vibration to be above that, so you're not in the soup. But when you get depressed, when you get unsettled, when you're not sure of things, there's a tendency for your frequency to drop. And the next thing you know, you're down there with all the collective consciousness soup. And so that's why it is important to quote what we say, raise your consciousness, raise the consciousness up to be self-supporting, self-aware, self-loving, understanding that the universe is there for you, to help you, to create what you want. And especially in these times where you sometimes feels a little helpless, I'm getting calls about that. And I'll talk about helpless in another day. I know I've done it before, but not everyone goes back and listens to the old videos. So I want you to know, or I wish for you to be able to work, if you haven't created an observer of your thoughts, to do so. To know that you can change your thoughts in the present. Yes, they're important because they're part of a bigger program, but that's one way of getting to that bigger program and breaking that program down. All of a sudden, they begins to realize, oh, she's not listening to that thought anymore. So, but of course, deeper work is often done. But it's a beginning. It's a beginning of being aware of how it can trigger emotional responses, which is often how we figure out there is an issue. And I know it's one of the greatest things that I have found for me when I wanted to begin to transform myself to being whole and becoming clear. So you've got some homework if you wish. You can become aware of the different types of thoughts. You can become aware, are they loving or not loving? Are they supporting or not supporting? Just make sure your own system, your own beingness is in support of you. Because if you're not in support of you, believe me, out there is not going to be in support of you. Because it reflects who we are. It reflects what where we're at. And we can wish and pray and do all sorts of other things. But the reality is our thoughts set the frequency of who we are. I wish you well for this week. I really do. I wish you many joys, many awarenesses, many knowings that, oh yeah, I do support myself. Oh yes, I do love myself. And if you like this video, please press like or subscribe to the channel. I speak every Wednesday. We put it up on YouTube. On Sundays, I streamline I'm laughing at that, streamlining a Sunday thought. And it's just a much smaller version of just something to think about. And you can always contact me through my website, normacowie.com. And subscribe to my monthly newsletter, which says where I'm going, what I'm doing, and specials that come up. You have a very, very good week, and I thank you for listening.